Hello, Jancee.
You
Can you hear me?
If you need to. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How fantastic. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Jancee, I was kind of like riffing while I was waiting for you to join. And so let me just sort of like frame us up here for you. Welcome to the Perry community. First of all, I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm so looking forward to our conversation. And I will ask everyone to just mute. You can go off camera if you want, but definitely mute your device. And if you have any questions or comments, typically Jancee, people will type them into the chat and I can facilitate those for you so you don't have to worry about reading and speaking at the same time. Okay. But I just to kind of like bring us to what we were riffing about, which we're going to talk about. I was thinking about, you know, your book, How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids. And I was saying, you know, we were kind of starting to talk about the sort of the real seriousness under the levity of a title like that. And I was saying that, you know, I am married, had a child, got divorced, and remarried. So like there's a thing there, right? There's a reality there. But anyway, we will get to all of that. Welcome, Jancee Dunn. So happy that you're here speaking with us. Are you in the country, by the way, or are you on a Welsh adventure still?
Oh, I'm back and I'm here in my house in New Jersey. So
okay.
Yes, here I am.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
More glamorous.
Okay, no, it looked terrific where you were and fun and beautiful. Jancee Dunn is the columnist for Well at the New York Times. She is also a New York Times bestselling author of 9 books, including, as mentioned, How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids, which was published in 12 languages, and the essay collection, Why Is My Mother Getting a Tattoo? Jancee, I just have to say, you have some of the best titles in all of publishing. Jancee has written about health for 2 decades in publications such as Vogue, the Oprah magazine, Real Simple, and Health. Welcome again, Jancee. Just to lay some groundwork here for all of us, obviously I've mentioned the title of your former book. Here is your current, Hot and Bothered, What No One Tells You About Menopause. Could you, if you would, share as much or as little about your relationship with your husband after the birth of your child? And I'm thinking sort of beyond that, kind of its inspiration for your book on that, How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids. So if we could maybe start there and then bridge the gap into the menopause conversation, that would be great.
Sure, of course. Yeah, I mean, they're both pretty major life events, aren't they? And in both cases, I'm just sort of realizing this now. It's like you can talk about it in the abstract all you want, but until you experience it, you know, it was both with parenthood and with menopause, you know, people would tell me about it and I could sort of process it, but I couldn't put myself in their shoes until I was there in both cases. And both the good and the bad. And I don't think, you know, menopause has been all bad. I really don't. And so, yes, when I had the baby when I was almost 43, I was an older parent. I was a geriatric parent, and as they call them. And, you know, I'm married. I'd been with my husband for 10 years and I always thought of him as a progressive guy, you know, and we talked about, you know, he wasn't some Cro-Magnon. And so I figured, okay, we're going to work this out like we always have. We didn't fight that much. It was just the 2 of us. And so I thought, well, this is going to be smooth sailing. I was so naive. And so when I had the baby, it was, first of all, almost the second the baby came out, all of a sudden, Tom, my husband, decides to take up training for the New York Marathon and long distance cycling.
Wow.
It's literally pedaling and running away from us. And, you know, you cannot, he said, you know, I want to get in shape for the baby, but it was also because he was terrified. I could not see that at the time. And, you know, neither of us had any experience. I babysat, but, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. And so we both locked into this pattern right away of I was the expert. He would say to me, "You're the expert." Just because I had ovaries, I guess I was the expert.
Right.
I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And
Right.
so, but then again, I shut him out. And this was on me. I had, when he would try to do things like bathe the baby or feed the baby or something, I would say,
Hmm.
let me just, no, the snaps are wrong. Those little let me get, and I was just hovering, and that's called maternal gatekeeping. And I was doing that to him. And so the more I shut him out, the
Hmm.
more he would call me the expert. And so we got locked into this pattern pretty quickly. And also, you know, I had a stay-at-home mom. His mom stayed at home for a long period of time. And so you can't escape from how you were raised. And so we both
Mhm.
also fell back into the patterns of our youth. And I thought, oh, wait, I'm doing a lot of the household work and he isn't. Like, I get breastfeeding or whatever, maybe I'm more qualified, but it doesn't take a PhD to empty the dishwasher, nor
Right.
does it require, ovaries. And so we just started fighting all the time, and it got really bad. And
Right.
we weren't fighters. We were these like, gentle writer. He's a writer also. And so
Okay.
I thought, wow, this is awkward because I write about mental health for a living. I write about relationships, and my own relationship was really falling apart. It got
Mm.
bad. We just couldn't find a way out. And I see this with new parents too. It's like, you're so tired, even with one. I thought, one, how hard is it? I have friends with three, but you're so fried, your world is turned upside down, and there's no time to assess what's going on, to recalibrate your relationship, so that's why I wrote the book, because I thought this can't be just happening to me. And also, when you go on social media and everybody
Mm.
seems like they're not fighting,
I
that they're
know.
having sex,
Yeah.
that they're well slept, the baby's not screaming, and
Yeah.
everyone's hashtag blessed.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel bad. So I thought, I'm
Yes.
used to, when I'm a writer, thinking like, what are topics that other people maybe aren't talking about a whole lot that we can talk about without a sense of shame or judgment? So
Mhm.
that's my incredibly long answer to your question of
No,
why
no, it's
I
not at
needed
all.
help, you
Yeah,
know?
it's not at all. And I do want to hover there just a little bit longer, but I
Sure.
so appreciate, the thing, not to conflate sort of being a new parent or with menopause, but there's
Mhm.
threads there that I think you're stitching together that are so helpful and important and resonate for everybody. And one of them is this kind of like, I had no idea. The reality is starkly and markedly different from the observation, the babysitting, just being around people and kids. It's like, it's got nothing, nothing, right? Nothing.
I have nieces and nephews. I've got this. Right.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And I would argue that for many of us, and I'm sure we'll start to hear this conversation more as so many of us are talking about perimenopause and menopause, which maybe our mothers, aunts, grandmothers didn't do. But this idea that somehow or you are an expert by virtue of having ovaries, by virtue of having a period for the last however many years, that somehow you'll sort of fluidly step into it, and it won't be like the cracking and explosion of everything as you knew it, sort of mind body experience. And again, it's like you just don't know till you're in it.
Yes, 100%. And it just, it makes me really appreciate all the women in my life that have gone before me. And I think, God, you didn't even have anyone to talk to about this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and you learn on the go. And yes, in both cases, I really underestimated it. I thought, okay, with this baby, if I get enough sleep, I didn't realize that our relationship was going to get so frayed. And I didn't realize how, yeah, how little experience anything that I had before that could
Mhm,
apply to what I was doing. I
mhm.
mean, does anyone remember, when if you gave birth in a hospital and then they hand you the baby and you get in your car and you go home and you're like,
Yeah, yeah.
what?
It's so funny you say that. The first night home, I'll never forget with my son, because it was like the worst night ever.
Was it?
Not in, oh my God, we have a baby and it's so wonderful, but it was in, sorry, I'm just going to ask everyone to mute your phone. But in that like terror of not wanting to screw anything up, and like I was breastfeeding. Is that enough? Is he getting enough? Why is he crying? I like the panic that ensues is pretty intense.
Right. Yes. So yes, we did work it out. We are still married, but I really did have to call on, I had amassed a lot of experts by then because I'd been interviewing them for years and years. And I said, help. And so many of them said, oh, you don't know, we hear about this all the time, and so it was everything from strategies about, like, you end up squabbling. It's really, I felt such a sense of shame. I'm like, why am I fighting about the dishwasher? Like, I can't believe, why is this taking such a monumental role in our relationship? And of course, it's not about the dishwasher, is it? And so I remember a couple of people, relationship experts, would say, go back, just sit down one day when the baby's sleeping or something, that magical moment when the baby's sleeping, you're supposed to get everything done. But like, and write down every chore that you have to do in your life with your partner, and divvy it up, because so often conflicts, I never forgot this. One of them said to me from the Yale Parenting Center that conflicts arise when your roles are not clear. And that's what it was with us. It was the lack of clarity of our roles. Like, it would be like, who worked harder during the week? And so who gets up with the baby on the weekend? It would be like this endless, well, you did this and I did that. And, so we made everything crystal clear about who was doing what. And even that helped, and I had to get used to stepping away and relinquishing control, and not feeling guilty about taking a little time for myself. And by little time, I mean like going to Target for 20 minutes and just like blankly staring at stuff, And so, and realizing that I wasn't doing our relationship any favor by making him the bad guy, and owning up to my own behavior too.
So this brings me actually to what you just brought up. And my next question is, you saw a relationship expert, Terry Real, is that right?
Yeah.
And am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay.
Yes.
And you wrote in somewhere, it may have been a post, it may have been a column. Tom and I did a harrowing yet transformative weekend intensive with Terry, who is famously blunt. He told me I was very comfortable with my self-righteous indignation, and told Tom to get the hell off the couch and help her out. So you've said that it was really helpful. Did you like, first of all, so you took advantage of sort of the people you had by that point amassed in your professional world and got to reach out to this person, and then you saw them as a couple for your own marriage and relationship. Is that right?
Yes. And Terry, I had heard about, I featured him a couple of times in the New York Times. He's he wrote a great book called Us most recently. And I had heard about him for years. He was the man from Boston. That's how people knew him when I wrote the book a few years ago. They were like, you got to see this man from Boston. He will yell at the both. Like, he's really hard. He takes sides. He's unconventional, and he tells it like it is. And he said to me, you're real comfortable being self-righteous. And, he so thoroughly we went for this relationship intensive for the weekend, and everyone warned me, like, you're going to be so rattled afterwards. He does not hold back. And indeed he did not. And for hours and hours, he drills down to your problems, and then he just tells you stuff that you need to hear. And so from that day, he gave us this exercise that I still think about. I may write about this actually. It was called Full Respect Living. And he said, okay, from here on in, I want you to try your hardest to when you interact with each other, not to drop below the level of simple respect. Just respect. I want you to try that. And I think he had us try it for a week. And it was almost impossible. Again, I felt like, oh my God, we're not even treating each other with respect. Like, it's just, it's
Like
so
in
hard.
dialogue and discourse
Yes.
being disrespectful? Okay.
Interactions.
Mhm.
That's the bar. Simple
Mhm.
respect. And you
Okay.
would think, well, of course I can do this. For us anyway, it was real difficult. And another for that book, Guy Winch, I also wrote, I interviewed him recently as well. Like there's some counselors out there that I really like. And he's
Mhm.
a psychotherapist in New York, and he has this podcast called Dear Therapists with Lori Gottlieb. But anyway, he gave us another exercise that I also never forgot. And it was write down 10 things. If you have a partner and you're, in the thick of this, write down 10 things that your partner did for you that you appreciate. And not qualities, not they're funny or whatever.
Right.
Physical things that they have done for you, because that they've taken it to the end. It's not just talking about it, they did it. And then we had to come back the next week. I'm a big, like, do my homework,
Yeah.
sit row type of person. So we got our assignments. And then the next week we went into Dr. Winch and he said, okay, you have your 10 things. And we said, yeah. And we were ready to read them to Dr. Winch. And he said, no, turn and read them to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it made me feel weirdly shy.
Yeah. It's like I feel that. I get it.
So,
Yes. Yes.
like, you're kind of like, oh, really? So I started reading to Tom, my husband, and I got to like number 6, and it was painted my parents' house last summer. And then I thought,
Wow.
wait a minute, hold up. He went weekend after weekend to my parents' house in New Jersey, got on a rickety ladder near a hornet's nest, painted not his parents, my parents' house.
Wow.
And that blew by me, because when you have a little kid, especially, or a baby, like, you're not thinking, like life is speeding up. It's both very slow and very fast, I feel, right? And so I remember reading that and looking at him, and then I started crying. I said, oh my God, you painted my parents' house. How could I not have properly thanked you for that? What is wrong with me? And, and then he was reading to me and he said, you're my best friend. He's never said that in 20 years. I didn't know he thought that. And that was a real, along with Terry telling it like it is, because there's something really, of course, I recommend counseling if you can do it. It's not cheap, even in cheap cases, I know. But if you can have a third party forensically examine your marriage, because, it's one thing to talk to your sister and be like, oh, Tom, he's so, he's not pulling his weight. And of course your sister is going to be like, yeah, he should step up. But when somebody else does that, it can be life-changing. So anyway, both of those exercises, we certainly didn't get it right with Full Respect Living. We still struggle with that, particularly me.
That's so helpful.
Yeah.
And I just hearing you sort of lay it out, I'm going to read a comment to you, Jancee, but hearing you lay that out also is making me think that you have this tool now in your relationship toolbox that you can apply in all times. And it also made me think that having a baby is enormously stressful for many, I would argue most people, even in the very best, most welcome, most happy birth experiences, great doctor, 9 months, like all of that, it's still a really stressful time. And so having these tools that you've illustrated so beautifully is super really, really helpful. And I thank you for that. I want to get to what someone has typed in here in the chat, but before I do that, I just want to ask you, this is like a silly question because this is what you do, but how is it for you to share so much of your personal life and experience in all of the work? Was that something that you always intended to do, or did that just kind of slip out as you were going on?
Weirdly, even as I sit here, even as I wrote a chapter on vaginal dryness, I am quite shy, actually. I don't know. Do you present? I present as an extrovert when actually
totally. Yes.
Really? Like,
oh yeah.
We end up doing what we do, but it's just
no
this
idea
thing that happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's like an on switch.
Enough years. Right. Like you faked it for enough years, like acting almost, where you sort of are able to do it, right? But same way, I'm quite shy, and I when I was, in both cases, in both books, like I knew I had to disclose part of my own life because as a reader, I tend to trust people that do that a little bit more, like, oh, okay, this is where you're coming from. And it's also comforting to know, because again, sometimes we get siloed, particularly both in the early days of menopause and in perimenopause. And if you have a kid, like, it can be so isolating.
Yeah.
And there's this pressure to make it seem like, that you do have this. And so I remember thinking, okay, just put yourself out there, because it's going to help people. Just write the book that you wish you had, and you have to tell the truth. And I remember when I showed the manuscript to my husband, Tom, again, because, he doesn't look great in this sometimes. And I said, go ahead and red pen anything that you want. Of course, you have final say. I don't want to sell you out here. And he said, no, I'm a journalist too, and it's the truth. This is what happened. And even when I was writing that book, I didn't know how our marriage was going to end. I really didn't. Like, it was a little touch and go.
Yeah.
And so I thought, this might not be all tied up in a bow at the end. And that's going to be awkward. But, it also follows some statistics about people who split. So what can I do? But no, it sometimes I look at what I've written and I think, oh, am I really sharing this with everybody? But I love how generations, I'm Generation X, and the generations younger than me, I'm really inspired by how transparent they are.
Yes.
Right? How
I have said that a million times. It's all out there, and it sort of has freed me up, and it sounds like you up.
Has it
about
freed you
much.
up?
Yes.
Right. Tell me how, because I find that so interesting. It's because I feel like once they get out there, then it's out there. Then it's out there. You're not confessing multiple times. It's out there. And it is so freeing. And once they position it a certain way, when they talk about, period talk, or, body images or acne, like, I just think, thank you, younger generations.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think of this often when I started on Instagram talking about perimenopause and menopause. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who sort of felt almost compelled or loosened up, less restricted to talk about some of what was going on, because there were all of these conversations already happening around how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, how I'm registering changes in my body that younger people were sharing. And I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that it impacted many of us in this niche, if you will, to come out with a lot of it. Jancee, I want to get to Brandy's comment, but I do want to sort of pivot us now to your book, Hot and Bothered, and sort of bring menopause deeper into the conversation. You mentioned here a few minutes ago and in your book that you kind of couldn't believe, as someone who explores, researches, speaks to so many people about being well, that the perimenopause piece had largely escaped you and maybe even blindsided you in some ways. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. Things have changed radically in terms of covering menopause, and especially perimenopause, just in the past couple of years. Like, whenever, I don't know about you, but whenever I get kind of frustrated, like, oh, this topic is still not out there the way it needs to be out there, I think, well, things have changed a lot in just a few short years. Like right now, even sometimes when we have meetings and we'll say, are we covering it too much? I'm thinking, what a problem to have, because back in the day, even when I say back in the day, I mean 5 years ago, nothing. And in fact, I tried, I sort of floated that idea with my publisher, a while ago, even before I was having symptoms. I thought, it's affecting half the population, like, let's go. But they weren't interested then. And so, yes, I've been writing about health for 20 years, and I just didn't know that much about perimenopause. And in fact, I had it in my head, oh, that's Golden Girls. That's for older women. I'm not even going to think about this right now. And when I first started getting symptoms, I mentioned I had a baby at age almost 43. So I had a 2-year-old when I started getting symptoms. I was
Right.
just not in that headspace at all. I was going to Elmo birthday parties. I was taking my kid to bouncy castles. I had a toddler. And so I just was in that kind of like, mother of a young kid headspace, certainly not thinking about menopause or perimenopause. And then I did the classic thing that so many people do, where you get symptoms and you don't connect the dots. If you don't
Yeah.
know what the symptoms of perimenopause are, how do you connect the dots, recognize a pattern, and see that this is what might be happening to you? It's also, hard. You've talked about this, I know, but it's hard to separate some of the symptoms from just being in midlife,
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm tired. Oh,
Yeah.
well, of course I'm tired. So there's that. And so when I started getting a couple of symptoms, I remember I got a racing heart. That's a common one. And I thought, uh-oh, heart attack time. I
Right.
went running to a cardiologist. I'm the run to the doctor type.
Mhm.
And but this was before I had a steady job. I was a freelance writer, and so I had a different health plan every year. I was always getting kicked off of health plans, and so I never had
Yeah.
steady doctors. Like another experience of many people, they're just constantly like
Yeah.
switching around. And so that was part of the problem in my case, is that there was never any continuity. So it became
Such a
even more
great
scattered,
point.
And so I go to the cardiologist, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And then my skin started changing and getting extraordinarily weirdly dry. I went to the dermatologist. Oh, I don't know what's wrong with you. Just, use more moisturizer or whatever. And so it went on like that. And there's research about that women can spend, thousands of dollars in copays and doctor visits
Yeah.
and time, because they're not connecting the dots. And then their doctors aren't
Right.
necessarily connecting the dots. And then it didn't even occur to me, a lot of women will try to like shoehorn in 10 minutes about it at the end of their annual visit. Well, their OBGYN is doing all these other things, the pap smear and the this and the that, and there's just not a lot of time. So
Right.
I remember one night, I put this in the book, but I was kind of lying in bed because I couldn't sleep. Another symptom. And it was like 5 a.m. My toddler was going to be up soon anyway, so I thought I'll just lay here. And I thought, honey, I haven't had my period in a couple of months. It's weird, so I kind of turned over, when your mind drifts. And then I turned over and my boobs were hurting. See, this is the stuff that's personal that I think.
Sorry,
wow,
I'm laughing. I'm just like it's like one symptom after another you're experiencing.
And still,
Yes. Yes.
nothing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember turning over, boobs jostling, and I'm like, oh, ow, my boobs hurt. And I thought, wait a minute, my boobs hurt. My boobs hurt, and I haven't had my period in 3 months.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Oh no. And we had only planned on having one. That was we never wanted any more kids. We were perfectly happy with one. And I remember shaking Tom and saying, oh, Tom, I think I might be pregnant. Like, couldn't even conceive of the idea of perimenopause.
Right.
That was for like the Arthur.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And so he said, wait, what? Again, on me, how annoying that was for me to wake him up. But I thought, oh my Lord.
That's what I'm thinking.
I know. So we go through this long conversation where we discuss the financial, emotional, psychological, logistical problems with having a kid. And finally, when it was fully morning, we said, all right, if this is what's happening, I guess we're going to try and have this kid. Like, it was a monumental conversation.
Sure.
And then that's not what was happening, and then I did end up having my period, and I thought, oh, okay, so something else is going on here. That was an extraordinarily long answer to your question, but the point is, I do have a point, and it's that I did not know what was happening, and I wasted time and psychological agita thinking I was pregnant. And, even when I started kind of figuring out what was happening, this story over and over again, isn't it, is that the onus is on the person who is having these symptoms to both recognize the symptoms, put it all together, go and see a doctor. It would have helped tremendously if I had known what the symptoms were, because it's a lot of it scared me. I thought, oh no, I have problems,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Jancee. I want to get to the I hate him part the sort of perimenopause piece too. And I just want to read for you someone's comment here. She writes, my husband and I have been married for 28 years and I'm 52. He did all the quote unquote research about perimenopause and he still tells me that I can still quote unquote choose to be happy. Hello, my hormones simply won't let me. They really want me to smother you in your sleep. This is her communicating her feelings. I've also become more intolerant of things that I've allowed for 28 years. This is a really important point. I think he's type A, and I've always been avoid conflict at all costs. Perimenopause makes me more on the angry side, even when he hasn't done anything wrong. Can you speak to this at all, Jancee, in your own personal relationship experience, research? I think this is, right before you jumped on and then I shared with you, we were sort of spending a little time riffing here about kind of this thread that's funny, as many things are around the conversation of perimenopause. Oh, the hot flashing, ha ha ha, and the I'm so irritable, and oh, I don't feel like having sex anymore. There's this like constant humor piece to that, but really not too deep under the surface. There's real sort of distraught angst, discomfort, frustration. Brandy's comment about sort of letting things be a certain way for 28 years. And I think kind of maybe hitting the wall, right, hormonally induced or not. It can create a lot of conflict and discord and unhappiness.
Yes. And I can speak to two things about that. And one is that in my own experience, I wasn't sharing fully what was going on. There's a long tradition of keeping a stiff upper lip with these symptoms, right? My mother and I never had a single conversation about menopause, not one. She's still living. We talk all the time. We talk about everything.
Yeah.
And this is one generation ago. I mean, it's kind of so radically different, even her experience, which is kind of amazing, right? And so we're socialized not to talk about it or to minimize it.
Sure.
And so what I was doing is I was still carrying sort of these vestiges of shame, misplaced, misguided shame that wasn't helping anybody and is also a cultural construct, right? And so I wasn't sharing with him. I remember I wasn't I started having bladder issues too, when the estrogen leaves your body and you tend to have a little bit more urinary incontinence. I can remember many times we would run to the house and he would walk slowly in front of me and I would say, I have to go, hurry, and I would get angry at him. And I wouldn't share with him, oh, what's actually happening is I'm sorry for yelling at you, but here's what's happening to my body. Just a clinical way, I have to pee much more frequently than I used to. And when I feel like I have to pee, it's going to take 30 seconds and then watch out because, I'm going to need wee pads otherwise. Like I wish I hadn't said that, but I did.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sharing fully what was going on with him. And I'm not saying, that she's doing anything wrong or not sharing fully, but like, that was my own experience that I didn't fully disclose. Here's what's happening to my body. And also PS, he's getting older too. Like I was minimizing it. Well, things are happening to him too. We're all getting older. We're all, having the privilege of getting older. And so I had to really sit him down and just explain in a very simple way. It's kind of like reverse puberty and the hormones are kind of leaving your body, whereas once they kind of flowed in when you were a teenager. And here's how it's affecting my body. And here are what my symptoms are. And when I'm swearing at my pants because I can't get them on, it's not, I'm frustrated that I have collected some weight around my middle and I don't want to buy new pants, but I have to. And so this is what's happening with me. And that way he can be my ally. So I'm all about full disclosure so that they can help you. But on the other hand, it's also a time, I heard this so often when I was researching the book, it's a time to assess your life, right? And to see what's working and what isn't, and to and this isn't me making it all menopositivity, but I do think it's a time of freedom where you think, okay, well, I need to assess my mental health, my physical health, my relationship, my life. Like it's a good time to pause and to see what needs a little tinkering. At least it
Mhm.
was for me, and for a lot of other people that I interviewed, and for experts too. They would say like you've been taking care of elderly parents or kids or pets, this, that, and now it's a time, maybe the kids are out of the house, or maybe you're just starting to feel symptoms, to take care of you. So it's difficult. And of course the onus is on you. And it's great that he, at least research that puts him ahead of the game. But, yeah, those are the two things that were helpful for me and that experts say to do. And it's not easy to talk about some of these symptoms. It's not super sexy to talk about how, you have to pee more often. My motto now is might as well pee while I'm here, like all I ever say. Um, but on the other hand, you're in it together, hopefully. But yeah, there was a lot of things that I had to assess in my
Yeah.
own life, like, to maybe pull back. Even how old's your son? My daughter's 14, and I thought I could pull
My
back a little
son's,
bit.
yeah, he's an adult. He's 27.
You're
Yeah,
kidding.
nope. I I'm 53, and so my circumstances are quite different from yours, but can I this is gonna be terrible on
You must
just
get
an
that
audio.
reaction. I know.
No, I don't.
I'm just
I'm loving
gaping
it.
at her,
I'm
and
like,
I just put on my readers, and I'm like staring at her because, Rachel, you must get this reaction all the time. Don't you kind of love it? Come on, you just admit it that
listen,
you'll be like, well, I'm
I
43. I mean 53. See, I just did it in my mind. And
yes,
you-
I love it. And that's why I went like this. I'm just gonna sit back and I'm gonna receive more of it. Thank you, Jancee. But let me say this. Sorry, clapping in the mic. To Brandy's point, this is really serious stuff. And to yours, Jancee, I want to let people know, if you haven't read Jancee's book, you offer really a letter that sort of serves as a template, if you will, for what to share with your partner. It kind of is that fair? Is that right to
yes,
say?
I did. I had I polled a lot of counselors on how to do it, because some people need a script. It's a
Yeah,
complicated subject, both medically and psychologically. And sometimes it's just easier to have a script,
it
and
is.
simple.
Yes, and I thought it was a great thing, and I thought about my own relationship and when I was really in the throes of symptoms. I think I'm getting
Mm.
close to the end now. I'm still getting a period, but
Okay.
I'm, at 43, I was definitely perimenopausal, and my symptoms and how they were sort of showing up in our relationship was really, really, really challenging. Now,
Mm.
of course, there's another person there, and as for many of us in relationships, there's another piece to the puzzle. But what has come out since is sort of the desire to know on the part of your husband. And I think Brandy's illustrated that as well, that her husband, in maybe doing his own research and taking that, it sounds like he could maybe use a little help with you can control this and you can control that. But I think certainly if you're able to go to counseling, that's a really, as we talked about, a really helpful tool. But this letter I loved because it is really hard to say these things. It's even hard to collect in a conversation what's happening. But when you can sit down and take the time to write out what you may be feeling physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, but also what you're saying is so important about seizing this time in a broader sense. It it's a particularly special time, just as puberty was, to be thinking about sort of the life, your future many years, and what you want it to look like, and who you want to be spending time with, and how you want to be expending energy, and what kind of attention you're going to give to your health. All of that is now as well, I think, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And just to take that opportunity, and it's so easy to neglect your own mental and physical well-being, right? I mean, that's, so many people in perimenopause are working, they're at the height of working, or they're taking care of kids, or they're doing all kinds of things. So it can be hard, but it's really vitally important. You deserve to go to the doctor if you have symptoms. You deserve to assess your life and see what you can do to make it better and what changes you can make. And I was even having like the flash periods that were really, really intense. And again, you just don't know until you're there. Like,
right.
Sometimes they can be Niagara Falls.
Yes.
Like, it's shocking.
I know.
So
I'm like hemorrhaging right now.
People. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're in it?
Yeah. It's like, I don't know where is this even coming from? Oh, and it's lasted like well over a week.
Oh my God, one of those. Oh,
yeah. So much fun. Jancee,
Wow.
I want to read to you Brandy's follow-up comment and allow you space to respond. We've done that. Forgive me, Brandy, because I'm not sure where we left off here. We've done that, but he is the type that you can choose how you feel. I've always struggled with anxiety and depression, and perimenopause has made that a little worse when that hormone fluctuation happens. Totally. I'm on HRT, and that has taken care of a lot of the symptoms, but the emotions are my biggest issue. Any thoughts on that, Jancee?
Well, I all I do is interpret information, and I am, I'm not a psychiatrist.
Right.
And so all I can say is that your feelings are real, and that you are perfectly within bounds to go and see somebody about them, and that they are valid and they are real. And sometimes not to go against your husband, but research shows that often you cannot choose how you feel. And especially if you are prone to depression, that is heightened during perimenopause. Again, research shows that is data. And if he's a data guy, you can show him the data. There's that can worsen your symptoms of depression. And it is, there's a clear tie to hormones and mood. And so it is what it is. I'm sure he means well. And I get that advice sometimes too, about that you can, most people, there's this Abraham Lincoln quote about how most people can choose to be happy. Well, now we know that that's not true.
Nor was it true for him.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Oh my God,
that too.
Another podcast. I know.
Dang.
Aphorism that everybody quotes, and he had mental health issues.
Yes.
Interesting.
I know. Jancee, I want to say also, sort of to put together some of Brandy's comments and what you've said. Truly, your book lends a lot of space for your readers to be authentic and think about authenticity in all things, the emotional stuff, caring for their health physically, the parts about aging. But ultimately, it's a real resource, this book. It really is sort of like a coming alongside the reader and saying, look, this is what I've experienced, and this is what I then found out about that thing. And it's the end of it is truly a resource of a little sort of lists and lists of people and places and things to consider. So I do again encourage people to take a look at it. Before I let you go, Jancee, what might you ultimately want to let all of us listening and watching know about this season of life?
Just to find community where you can. Podcasts like this are extraordinarily helpful. Even if you're not participating and you're just listening, it's so comforting. You know, I think about my mom, how she never had a single conversation with anyone about perimenopause or menopause. And I feel so sad. So if there's people with whom you feel safe, I would never give advice like, oh, step up in the conference room of your job and sit and demand, this and that. Like, that's not the world we're living in. I
Right.
hope by the time, my kid gets older, it will be. I'm confident that they're not going to stand for a lot of this stuff, but, share your story with people with whom anyone that you feel safe with. Talk to them about it. Don't keep silent. Talk about it as much as you can. Talk about it to your doctor. If your doctor is not hearing you, find another doctor. Some people stay loyal to their OBGYN that deliver their babies if you had babies. And maybe they're not a menopause specialist. Go to menopause.org and you can find a specialist. You can see them 1 or 2 times and then they kick you back to your primary care physician. But you can find a specialist that's written like 300 papers on menopause, and they're at Yale Medicine. Lubna Paul, Dr. Lubna Paul is a person that I quote in the book, and she's you can't pronounce half the stuff she's writing about. Like she's one of like a literal genius.
Yeah.
That's who's in charge of your menopause care, and you can do it you can do it virtually. So you do it 1 or 2 times. Yes, you probably have to pay out of pocket, not fun, but then then you can go back and you've had someone who can quickly and efficiently refer you to all the people that you need to see or do that. So talk to people, go to menopause.org. There's even for community, there's the Menopause Cafe. I think it's menopausecafe.org. You can talk to a bunch of strangers about your perimenopause symptoms. It's these cafes they have. They do them in the United States. They do them all over the world. And it's weirdly easier. Like here we are
Yes,
today,
of course.
to talk to people you don't know. I don't know why that is.
No, I think Perry as a community, and thank you for mentioning us, by the way, in the book. It's so awesome. I exclamation pointed right by our mention in the book. But yes, there is something to certainly what you said, community, but there is something unique about community of strangers sort of all going through the same thing. There's something about your ability to unload in among an audience like that, wouldn't you say?
Oh, completely. And every menopause experience is a little different. So the more that you can learn about what worked for other people, the better. The more we're talking, the better. And I really do feel confident that we're going to slowly chip away at the stigma and just make it easier for generations coming up.
Jancee, this has just graced our doors, but so I hate to ask sort of like what's next, but is there anything on your horizon that is that we should know about that you might want to share about? Certainly not.
No, I'm mostly, I got this job at the time. So I write a wellness column every week for them. So I had these big plans when I got the job last Halloween. Oh, I'm going to work on another book at the same time. It is kicking my behind. And so that's all I'm doing right now. But generally they kind of follow my life somewhat. So I don't